Hey guys, we'll give it a couple seconds for people to get in. And that's a couple seconds. That's my running joke. If you came in from somewhere new and you haven't followed me, my name is Dustin Wiley, owner of Viking Financial Group. I've had a pretty heavy social media marketing, I guess you'd just say reach for the last 3 or 4 years. And I help people all the time with their finances. I'm basically what you call the financial whistleblower. Where I came from, a little bit of backstory on me. I grew up really poor, like really poor, didn't know anything about money. The only thing I knew was what not to do with it. That's how I learned my lessons. About 4 or 5 years ago, I was a plumber and I was at the gym and this guy walked in, he's like 6'3", tan skin, big watch, drove a G-Wagon. I was like, this guy's got it made. Well, he jumped on the phone one day and was talking to a client. And he's like, hey, I get it. Market sentiment's bad. The best thing I can do for you is a guaranteed 1% CD. And I was like, I know nothing about finance, but that doesn't sound right. So I went home, Googled CDs, and saw that they were averaging 5%. So that guy was basically making an 80% rip on his commission on all of his clients. And I was like, okay, this guy has all that money because he's scamming clients. I don't like that. How do I get into this industry to help people like my family, myself, people that deserve to be taken care of? Then someone's not going to lie to you. So that's why I got into the industry. That's my backstory. David, he's been in the industry about the same amount of time that I have. I'll kind of let you give his story. It's a little bit less dramatic than mine, but yeah, go ahead, David.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys have watched any of our other seminars, you've heard this before, but for me, I've been in this industry about 5 years now, and I started at a company that was great for starting. They taught me a lot of fantastic things, but I started realizing that most people in this industry just don't really know what they're doing, and they start learning from their manager or their upline or their mentor. And their same thing, manager or mentor learns from their manager or mentor, and the way that they are trained is to maximize the profit of the company or the agency or the insurance company that they worked with, which, as I always tell people, there's three parties in any transaction. There is the insurance institution or financial institution, there's the agent and the client. So the more the agent and the financial institution are getting paid, guess where that comes from? It doesn't come out of their pocket, it comes out of yours. And when you start in the insurance business, they always tell you go talk to your warm market, go talk to your friends and family, the people you care about, so we can show all this value to them. And I saw very quickly after a couple of those meetings that they really didn't care as much about the clients as I thought. And that just made me feel sick. So a couple years later, we ended up just starting our own company because we looked everywhere out there trying to see what was good, what was bad. And we didn't really find a lot of companies that did it ethically the way that we would want our parents' money to be handled, because that's exactly what happened at that old company. Was had my dad sit down with someone, he did an annuity right when he was about to retire. And it ended up being a story where the market did like 40% over 2 years and he got like 5% because the guy selected the wrong indexes and didn't know what he was doing. And I don't ever want anyone to go through that with their money or their parents' money, especially because you can get back money that you lost, but you can never get back time that you lost. So if there's money, the market is doing well, we want to make sure that we're optimizing people's strategies and making sure that we don't ever have to worry about making up for lost time or lost money by doing it right the first time.
Yep. And real quick, I had a funny meeting this weekend. We were at a coaching event, and a guy told me, he's like, I hate financial advisors because they all have yachts. I want the final financial advisor where his clients have yachts. And I thought that was kind of funny. But this webinar, just strictly retiring in 5 to 10 years, this is for people that are looking to retire in the next 5 to 10 years, whether it's you, your mom, your dad, your grandma, your grandpa, your coworker, your boss. There's things that we're going to tell you today that would completely blow your mind if you had no financial literacy. And I commend you to not think like, hey, I've gotten to this point doing this one plan. I really don't want to veer off because I know this works and I know there's a lot of scams out there. Please don't have that mindset. And that's just where I'll keep that. So, real quick, are you on the right path? A lot of Americans follow the traditional retirement path. The traditional path, just real quick, is like, hey, and you've heard this, you set up a 401k, you take the match, maybe you max it out, maybe you have a Roth IRA on the side. And that's your entire strategy. Unfortunately, you start a job, HR says, hey, we have a 401k. Do you want to put into it? Sure. How much should I put in? Oh, we'd probably say do the match. That's the last time that most people ever look at their 401k. So, with that being said, the average 401k at the age of 65 is $216,000 a year. So, I don't want to shock you. $216,000 as income per year is great. In your retirement savings, that's going to kick off about 8 grand a year. So, if you are on that projected path, expect about 8 grand a year. That's all I'll leave that at. We're going to compare, of course, the traditional strategy we just talked about, and then smart retirement planning. It's not like an acronym like SMART, specific, measurable, attainable. We're just saying there's multiple different ways to skin a cat to retirement plan, but there is a way, a best way to get the most amount of retirement income, to pay the government the least amount, all that good stuff. And your choices today will determine your financial security later. We always say, like, and this is corny, what's the best time to plant a tree? It's 20 years ago. What's the second best time today? You have anything to add to that, Fish?
Just some of the big things I've seen from talking insurance stories with clients is the whole traditional financial planning model really started back in the 90s, where there was a study called the Trinity study that was done. It was literally a Nobel award-winning prize. And they found out that based on metrics and having a portfolio of equities and bonds, you can take out, like Dustin said earlier, about 4% of your income of whatever the asset value is for the rest of your life. And that is not a huge amount of income. If you want to maintain $100,000 a year, you basically need $2.5 million in those 401ks to have $100,000 a year before taxes, which most people can't afford to use that type of planning these days, as Dustin said, with the average 401k being about 200,000. That's just horrific. And the biggest thing that we've seen too over the last 25 years, I'm sure you all would agree, investments, financial strategies, products, the markets, economics has changed pretty drastically. You would want strategies that are keeping up with that, not using outdated strategies like a lot of the traditional plans that were built, 20, 30 years ago and aren't keeping up with the crazy inflation we have, the crazy volatility we have in the markets. I mean, something could happen on the complete other side of the world. And 30 seconds later, a social media post, the market tanks 30% in the US. Like our world is so connected. And that's why a lot of these financial planning models fail to give enough retirement income, is because they don't keep up with all the variability that we have today and all the craziness and chaos we have.
So we can talk about the history of pensions to 401k. If you didn't know, pensions are basically gone. Last bullet point, it worked for my parents. Yeah, that's great, but pensions they used to be all over the place. Now they're very rare. The reason why is they wanted to shift the risk from the company to the employee. So if you and your employer put $500,000 total into your pension, but you could get 100% of your final salary, and that was $100,000. In a traditional 401k, you'd use up your entire 401k in 5 years. But that pension holder, that company would have to pay you that 100 grand until you died. So a full 500 grand and you live for 20 years, they paid you $2 million, buck and a half above how much you had. So, like, why would we put into a pension system to where we have to pay you after you're retired and gone and you're not doing anything else for us when we can just not even give you a full match? If you know anything about your 401k, a lot of people I meet with have about a 5% match, meaning that once you put in five, they'll give you two and a half, they'll give you 50%. I met with a client the other day that they'll do 50% of anything you put into. So he put in 23 grand, got the match to 11.5, and I was like, it's not a terrible idea, but when we're talking about taxes, it can't be the best idea, just logically. I won't even say it based on your situation that it's not the best, but it just can't be. So I know you have a lot to say about pensions and 401ks.
You think about this, a lot of the changes with strategies and tax situations and all that is that's a 401k is a tax code. It's nothing fancy. The reason they came about is like Dustin said, because a lot of companies were using pensions and the pensions had to pay people out for life. The reason they changed, what a lot of people don't realize, is people were living longer. So these companies couldn't afford to keep paying out this guaranteed income for life or even the spouse's life. Because as one person lives longer, that's one thing. But if now the spouse is living longer, and let's say I pass away at 85 and my wife passed away at 95, that's a huge amount of income they're guaranteed to pay out, and that is a liability on their balance sheet as a company. So as companies want to grow and get bigger, they have to make those balance sheets look good. So as people are living longer, what ended up happening was back in 1978, Congress passed what was called the Revenue Act. All that created is the tax code of the 401k that allowed employees to put into a retirement vehicle that was air quotes tax advantaged. A lot of people think, "Oh man, I'm doing tax advantages. That's fantastic." All it was is it's complete lie. The 401k was meant to take the onus off of the company and take the risk off the company, put that onto the employee, where now they can put a certain amount away. Yeah, it's a tax deduction, but a deduction is a deferral. It's kicking the can down the road. It's not an elimination. If it was an elimination of tax, that'd be fantastic. So companies started matching these because they said, hey, we don't have to pay people out for life. If people run out of money in their 401k, that's not on us. That's on them because they spent too much. So now what ended up happening is companies were way more profitable, and it took away the basis of, American retirement and the American dream, because now people just knew, you know what, I just had to work till 65 and then I'm set. Now they had to start heavily putting away money without even a guarantee of retiring with a certain amount of income. Because you think about these two products, a pension and a 401k. A pension is what's called a defined benefit plan. That means I make a certain amount and I make it for a certain amount of years and I retire at a certain age. I get, like Dustin was saying, up to a certain amount of income, a guarantee for however long I work. A 401k is what's called a defined contribution plan. All that means is you have no idea what the benefit is going to be on the back end or what the income is going to be. Guess what you can define? It's in the name. You are literally defining what you put into the account. You have no idea what's going to happen on the back end. So that's really how all this stuff affects the Americans now is, like Dustin said, people think, you know what, my parents are retiring comfortably, like what's going on? Why do I need to maybe make some changes? The truth is because a lot of people had three different retirement vehicles. They had a pension, a 401k, and personal savings. Now pensions are almost irrelevant. So people are trying to put the whole weight of their retirement on their 401k and personal savings. And now Social Security is not really going to be around or severely reduced. So the reintroduction of a lot of these companies of making your own personal pensions on the side and showing people how to do that, it's becoming even more important because you thought back in the 70s people were living long. Medical advances now, I mean, people are living into their hundreds, 120s. So that's really where people are starting to shift back away from the 401ks, back to the pensions. But guess what? Companies aren't setting it up. People are learning how to set them up for themselves so they don't run out of money if they live too long.
Glad you talked about life expectancy because call this a conspiracy theorist if you want to, or conspiracy theory. Social Security was set to be full benefit at age 65 for a reason, because life expectancy was about 58 years old. They expected about 8% of people to actually live long enough to take Social Security. Well, now, full Social Security age is 67. The average person, male and female, lives to about 81. They did not expect us to take 14 years of Social Security. And the way everything's going, taxes have to double to get us to that point. So it's kind of crazy to me. And we talk about the 401k real quick to define what the actual 401k is, because David touched on for a second. Section 401 of the tax code, subsection K, was created in the 70s to say, hey, taxes are really high. They were the highest bracket was 70%, believe it or not. Now it's 37%. They could take that 70% income, defer it to the future when they knew taxes were going to go down, and then now we can take that income. So if you could defer it at 70, take it at 37, it made a lot of sense. But today, if you defer 22 to pay 44 when taxes double, it's nonsense. Makes no sense. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about person A, person B. I like to do some examples just to get your brain fluids flowing. You probably know a person A and a person B. Most people are probably person A, unfortunately. So you follow the traditional retirement plan, 401k, maybe you have a Roth IRA. What that does is it gives you the full market risk. You have taxes if you don't have the Roth IRA or the Roth 401k. And then the average fee in a 401k plan, I get ate up all day about this. It's 2.2%. I ask people all the time on social media, hey, if you think there's no fees in a 401k, if you think your all-in fee is 1%, bring me, please bring me the comprehensive fee schedule. If you bring it to me and it's less than 1%, I will eat my words. I will live stream video and I will tell everybody I was wrong. But guess what? I've asked that at least 50 times and I've yet to get one. So if you have a 401k plan, if you have an IRA plan, call your holder and ask them, hey, I want a comprehensive fee schedule. Once you get that back and you realize you're paying 2% in fees to earn seven, which nets you five, which you have to pay taxes on in the future, which really nets you three, why are we doing this? So person B implements the smart retirement plan, tax-free growth, guaranteed income, protected assets. We're not saying this is the perfect way for everybody. We're not even saying it's the best or even close to a good possibility for yourself. It all depends on the client. Every single person is different. I get asked all the time, what's the best for me? It depends. I know you don't want to hear it, but it depends. If you come to me and say, what's the best diet? and I tell you kale, but you're allergic to that stuff, it's not the best diet. So guaranteed income means some form of insurance. You're building your own pension. A pension program is just, hey, I put in this much money, defined contribution and defined benefit. Here's my contribution, $500,000 of my old 401k, and here's the defined benefit, 7.65 income for the rest of your life. You can do that for yourself by simply just shifting what you've already done and what you already have.
I got
Got
nothing to
anything?
add to that. That was perfect.
Nothing. Okay. We'll go person A. Person A invests in the 401k and IRA. Like we said, most of the time when people start a job, you go to HR. Here's your 401k. Okay, what is that? It's a retirement plan. Okay. We match 4%. Give me the 4%. Cool. You get a tax deduction for that. Oh, sweet. The IRA, individual retirement account, you have limitations. I believe it's 7,500 right now. You can go traditional, which will give you the tax cut, but you're kicking the can down the road to who knows whatever that tax bill is. We always like to say, would you go into business with a business partner? Hey, David, in 20 years, I'm not going to take one single dollar of income. It's all you. But at the end of 20 years and one day, I'll then tell you how much money I'm taking. Would you go and take that deal? Guarantee you, there's not a person alive that says, yeah, I'll do that. Because what if I wanted 100% for the next 30 years? You don't know. And that's what you're doing with the government whenever you kick the can down the road in a 401k or IRA. Talk about market volatility as well. Market volatility just basically means full upswing, full downswing. 2007, if you earned 25%, and then in 2008, you lost 40%, you got the full upside, but you also got the full downside. Market volatility means you look at your account's worth a million, the next day it's worth 600,000. That gives you a heart attack. Most people don't want to go through that. And then if you add high fees and taxes, most people just don't know that this is tied to their 401k. You have the market volatility, average fee is 2%. Whenever you get to retirement, you don't know what your tax bill is going to be unless you sit with somebody like us that can future value, project out what you're going to have, tell you, hey, based on today's tax rates, this is what you could see. But people, advisors, are not paid to one, talk about Social Security, two, this is how it goes. An advisor works for a firm. Hey, you're not a tax strategist. Don't talk about taxes. Okay. You don't work for the Social Security Administration. Do not bring up Social Security. Okay. And that's how it goes, unfortunately. So just because you have an advisor, you like them, doesn't mean they're looking out for your best interest. And I'm not saying that to sell us. I'm just telling you from what we've seen over the years. RMDs, if you don't know what they are, required minimum distributions, basically just means if you have a pre-tax account, once you hit 72, 75, the government's going to say, hey, you have to take this much. We don't care how much you want to take. You will take this much out of your retirement accounts because we want our tax money. Simple enough. And then no guaranteed lifetime income. So person A has all the volatility, all the fees, paying taxes, have to pay themselves so much whenever they get into their 70s, and there's no guarantee they won't run out of money. I say this all the time, the number one fear of Americans is public speaking. They'd rather die than public speak. Number two, running out of money in retirement.
Man, that's powerful. Just to make this sound a little bit better, because I know Dustin sounds like he went over a ton of negatives and like, why the heck would you ever do this? The 401k is a great accumulation vehicle for building wealth. It is a terrible plan for distributing wealth when you're taking income. So there's nothing wrong with a 401k. We just want to preface that. But most people don't understand a lot of the pitfalls or holes in the plan. And that's what we're just really trying to bring some awareness to here. You should 100% do your 401k, take the match, take advantage of all those things. But beyond that, we need to be careful how much we're putting in here in light of the things that are coming over the next 20, 30 years before some of you guys might be retiring, or even in the next, couple years if you guys are going to be retiring soon. But just to give you an idea of some of the things that these people sound like, if you might or be like, what, I don't know if I'm person A, am I person B? Tell me if this sounds like you, and this is probably going to label you. You're a guy who, has a financial advisor, or you're kind of just do it yourself. You want to be doing things on your own. You're a little bit untrusting. You're like, what, I'll just let my company do it. Or I'm just investing in a brokerage account and buying stocks at a good price, long-term holding, like Warren Buffett says, and value investing. You might have a company plan, again, that takes advantage of a match. You're really wanting to lower those taxes now because that's the main draw for the plan for you is, what, I don't want to pay taxes now. But like Dustin said, it's deferral. It's kicking the can down the road. They're not doing this out of the goodness of their heart. They're doing this so that they can get a huge tax bill later because they're getting taxes on all the money, not just some of those contributions. That's in my mind, what I always call procrastination is Americans, we are horrible at doing things when we know we should. If we can do it today, I would never leave it to tomorrow. That's just kind of a personal mantra of mine. Another myth that I want to touch on for person A is guys might be thinking, well, you know what? Why don't I just put all my tax dollars in there? Because at least that's growing and compounding and I'll have more down the line and it's going to net out in my favor. Well, that's one of the biggest myths out there, and we'll cover that a little bit more later. But if you're doing that, almost 30% of the account down the line ends up being the government's or paid to taxes, and you end up paying about 3 to 5 times more taxes in general by doing that than what you saved by contributing to the plan in the first place. So if that sounds like any of the reasons that you put money into the plan, we're not discouraging you from doing that, but you need to be cautious of anything above and beyond the match. Keep contributing to that because it could snowball into a huge effect down the line that could be too hard to unwind the longer you wait.
Yep, and one food for thought I'd tell you real quick, just to get your brain thinking. The only time that I would ever overfund my 401k above the match, and this is not advice, is if you're in a 32% tax bracket and you're at the bottom of that bracket and putting up to the limit of $24,000 roughly would drop you to the 24% tax bracket and save 8%. That makes sense all day. Or if you're in the 22 and you can drop to the 12, that makes sense all day. But if you're in the 24% tax bracket, which is a lot of people, and you can drop yourself to the 2% bracket, it's like, why would I save 2% today to possibly pay double taxes down the road? And then person B, we call this the smart plan. Again, we're not saying this is the smartest plan. There's always a better plan for someone differently. There's going to be a different plan between me and David. So let's just say person B saved into index universal life insurance policy. If you don't know what that is, just basically a life insurance policy that has guarantees where you can't lose to the market, has lower fees than most other permanent policies, and you have almost the full upswing of the market with all the downside protection. So if the market goes negative 40, you get a zero. If the market goes up 20, you might get, a 12. So the index universal life policy will grow you tax-free income. The fixed indexed annuity will take whatever accounts you've already accumulated in, give you the floors and caps like we talked about. So if you have a 0% floor, market goes down 20%, you get a zero. If it goes up 15%, you might be capped at 9, but you are taking the money that you've already accumulated and you're protecting it. Because if you haven't heard, there's 3 phases in retirement planning. There's accumulation, which is normally age 18 to age 50. You have protection, which is about age 50 to 65. Like we can't lose a significant amount of money or it'll completely set us back. And then we have distribution whenever you decide to distribute. So right now, if you're listening to this and this is you, you're in the protection phase. If you want to take home run hits and you want to swing for the fence, probably going to have to work until you're 70 or 80. But if you're the type of person you're like, hey, I did this my whole life, I need to do what's best for me to protect my accounts plus give me the most amount of income, this is going to be for you. So the benefits would be the tax-free growth on the index universal life, and I'll just call it IUL for now. The distributions on an IUL and an FIA can be upwards of 8%. So we talked about the Trinity study saying that you can take 4% income per year without running out of money. Well, what if we could double that? Just double it by going from 4% to 8%. Well, also in the IUL, if you double it from 4% to 8% and it's tax free, you're really receiving like 150% more income. So it also has the downside protection. Like we said, you have a 0% floor where if the market goes down, you lose nothing because your money's not in the market. It's in this policy mirroring the market. Won't get too deep into that. There's no RMDs or tax surprises within the cash value life insurance policy because whenever you put money away post tax, the government took their taxes. They don't care what you do with the money from there on. They got paid. They actually want you to do the Roth IRA. They want you to do cash value life insurance so they can get their money today. The guaranteed lifetime income stream because you don't have to worry about downswings in the market. So we call it sequence of return risk. If your sequence of return is plus 10, minus 10, plus 5, minus 20, and you're taking income along the way, you'll actually run out of money very fast. And I think we have an example here pretty soon. Still uses the 401k and IRA. So that's one thing I'm glad David brought up last slide is like we may talk about the 401k, the negatives, but it's not to say it's bad. It's to say, hey, open your eyes. There's other avenues. 401k with a match, I almost always tell my clients to take, especially if you have a Roth. If you have a Roth 401k with a Roth match, which is very rare, probably the best thing you're going to have access to.
Absolutely. I think the key here, just to highlight, is it's not a you're one person or the other. It's you're not doing only equities, only 401ks, only IRAs, or only insurance. It's we need to have a blend of both, and the blend is going to depend on someone's income, someone's tax bracket, someone's age they're retiring, how much income they need, what are their preferences, concerns. It's going to be person to person. So if there's ever a person showing a one size fits all approach of like, hey, everyone should do life insurance, everyone should do all annuities, everyone should do all money in your 401k, you don't need anything else. Like Dustin said a second ago, anything on the extremes is usually not the truth. It's usually somewhere in between. And that's where we like to live is working with professionals. It's important because you have to make sure that they are using the right allocation of blends for all those different things, depending on where you're at. So the person B, they're really someone who wants to maximize all their assets and have it work together. Because again, the things that help you in the accumulation phase of retirement are the things that actually work against you when you're taking distributions. What I mean by that. So you guys have all heard buy low, sell high. We know that's supposed to happen. If you have a 401k and you have a blend of stocks and bonds, how can you buy low, sell high if everything takes a 30% hit in the market and your 401k is down and now you have to take a distribution of income? You can't buy low, sell high. So simply by having some of these buckets that are protected to be able to take income from, just by doing that, that's why we can increase the income so heavily, is because we don't ever have to save up money for the down years of the market. So again, if you're someone that really wants to make sure that you're being as efficient as you can with the money you have, or you're like, you know what, I'm a little bit behind. I want to make sure I'm catching up for those lost years because you put your family ahead of you, you had sports, you had college, you had all these other things you're saving for. We really need to be talking about shifting you more to person B to make sure that you're not lacking that retirement income and having a surprise when you get there. Because most of the clients that we talk with, we tell them ahead of time. They're not surprised, but the last thing you want to have happen is being like, you know what, I'm about to retire. All right, let's look at everything. How much income am I going to have? Wow, that's not even close to what I need. And now we have to downsize. Now all those years of working so hard and the wealth you built is completely pointless because you can't even enjoy yourself. So the message here is don't be discouraged. Like you said, if you didn't know about this stuff yet, that's where you want to work with professionals to help you uncover if there's any risks or if you're on the right path and make sure you're going down the right path to be efficient if you can take advantage of some of those things.
I think Dave Ramsey is a good Christian, kind-hearted person, but the number one issue that people say once they get out of his program is when I retired, I thought I would have more. Completely out of debt, put all their money into 401k, but once they see the income that it yields and the taxes they have to pay, 100%, almost 100% of the time it is, I thought I would have more. So with that being said, I want to give you one bit of information before we move to the next slide. And that is, if you've never heard of captive versus independent advisors, insurance agents, advisors, whatever, it's very important. So if you are a captive advisor, you have to sell exactly what your company tells you to sell. So you work for Edward Jones, here's the three companies you can use for insurance. Here's our trading methods, here's our platform, here's the indexes that we use, or here's how we manage money. They have to follow those guidelines. An independent person is independent. They can go out and get contracts with 100 different companies. They can use whatever indexes they want. They can use their own strategies, their own softwares. They can charge what they want to charge. So, with that being said, you have to ask yourself, if I'm with a company that is a big name, a very large name, and everyone knows what they are, maybe I take 5 seconds to research what they are. Because then that's going to tell me Fisher Investments, let's just talk about them. David's dad, haha, running joke.
Yeah.
Fisher Investments, the owner, he actually said, and I quote, I would rather die and go to hell than to sell an annuity to a client. The reason why they bring that up is because they make money on what's called assets under management, meaning if they have $100 million of assets and they charge 1%, they get $1 million per year to stare at a computer screen and watch the market go up and down. So if they have $1 billion, guess what they make? $100 million a year or 10 million, whatever that ends up coming out to be. They make all that money off of management fees. So not saying this to scare you, not saying this to fire your advisor. Just know that there's a reason why your person is pitching what they're pitching to you.
hmm And by
Taxes
the
and
way,
retirement. Go
but
ahead.
I gotta cover something on the Dave Ramsey quick because I live in Nashville, so I'm hearing this stuff all the time. I can tell you, we did an in-person event recently. Not a single person we met with in the event was off from what Dustin said. Every single person was like, I thought I would have way more than I have. I've been doing Dave Ramsey for 20, 30 years. What do I do now? I've seen it happen so much out here and it is so painful. So please don't let that be you. Take his advice on debt when it comes to investing. He's not a licensed advisor. We'll just put it that way. There's a reason he doesn't have a license. It's because if he did have one, he would lose it so quick because his stuff is so far off base.
So non-compliant. Yes. At the end of
Yes.
the day, he's just basically a podcast host, just to be honest.
Yep.
So we'll talk about taxes and retirement. We talked a lot about tax brackets, histories in tax. Real quick, I'll tell you again, if I didn't already tell you, the highest tax bracket in the 50s was 90%. So the president back then said, why would I keep working after the middle of the year when I can just go retire for the rest of the year and not have to pay the government 90% of my income? In the 50 or in the 70s, the highest tax bracket was 70%. So to say that taxes can't go up or won't go up is completely wrong because they have been twice, three times as high in the past. So 401ks, IRAs, if they are not Roth again, are taxed at a future rate. Do we know what future rates are going to be? Not at all. We can look at historicals all day long as far as like returns in the stock market, trends in the market, taxes. We can look at it all day, but it's not a good predictor, especially the way the national debt keeps going up and taxes are set to double by 2035 for us to actually just keep Medicare and Social Security alive. Just for it to keep doing what it's doing today, it stated that we have to double taxes. So if you think about it, if you could reduce your taxes by paying it today, and I know we're already hurting and we want that tax break, but if you could pay the taxes today to a historically low rate, not pay the future taxes, imagine how much better that would be for you. And whenever we talk about fees, we have a pretty good chart coming up here in a second, but you'd be surprised the difference between a 1% fee and a 2% fee is so dramatic. A difference between a 1% fee and a 4% fee is insane. It's almost half the accumulation. So fees do matter. Are they important? Yes. Are fees going to be charged? Yes. No one does anything for free. You just have to ask yourself this one simple question. What do my fees get me? So real quick, I'll get off topic. Dave Ramsey talks about cash value life insurance, IULs that we talked about a minute ago. Oh, the fees are crazy. Yeah, they're a little nuts in the first 10 years. But over a lifetime, 40, 50, 60 years, you pay 0.5% in fees. You are not going to find a financial advisor that charges you 50 basis points. You won't. So a 50 basis point charge or 0.5% can get you double the income in a pension like return where you basically can't run out of money as long as you take the right income. That fee makes sense. So person A pays taxes on the withdrawals, meaning they saved up in their 401k IRA, they take the income, they pay taxes as it comes in. Who knows what that rate is? Person B paid the taxes today to not pay the future taxes, and they get to keep more money in the long run.
On that, what I'll add, the hardest thing to plan for as a financial professional and our advisors on staff is you can't plan for unknowns. It's impossible. If you have so many variables like taxes, market losses, all these other things, the more variables just decrease the amount of income that you can take out. So the reason we really love the tax-free strategy so much is eliminating the tax risk of saying that every dollar in the portfolio is going to be mined down the line, regardless of what happens to taxes. We now have more certainty and we can take out more income because we never have to worry about it again in the future. So that's why that's so powerful is you should still have, again, money in the 401k. There is actually an optimal amount that if you guys haven't seen the how to get to the 0% tax bracket seminar, there is actually a certain amount that you need in your IRAs and 401ks that if you take it out down the line, you have a standard deduction and all that money is actually tax free. But anything above and beyond that, again, that's where we need to use these tax free strategies. So that's my favorite talking point is if we have taxes in the portfolio, we have no idea what we're going to be paying, and it's just hopes and dreams down the line. My analogy for this, Dustin stole it earlier, is the business partner analogy. Would you ever go into business with someone where if we said, hey man, we're going to build this business, we're going to be exiting for, millions and millions of dollars, but here's the catch. I'm not going to tell you what my cut's going to be until we sell the business down the line. Would you ever take that deal? I don't think a single person here would, but that's exactly what you're doing with the government when you entered into your 401k or IRAs, is you went into a partnership with the government with your retirement. And they have the freedom, whether you think taxes are going to go away or not, I don't think they will be, because even if they go away, guess what? They can come back just as easily. So Disinherit the IRS, start taking more control of the taxes in your portfolio, and you're going to have so much more certainty and clarity of your retirement and a lot less stress as a byproduct.
If you made it this far so far, I'll give you two big nuggets real quick. So he talked about putting a certain amount of money away in your 401ks and IRAs, being able to get the deduction over your lifetime and still take the money tax free. If you are single and you save up to $350,000 total in your 401k, your IRA, or 700,000 as a married couple, technically, when you take that 4% income, it's tax free because of standard deduction. And now you're not going over the limit for your Social Security, so now your Social Security is not taxable. So you get tax-free Social Security, tax-free 401k IRA, and your first 90,000, and I want you to go Google search all this. Do not just sit here and listen to me. Your first $90,000 out of your portfolio every year for long-term capital gains tax is tax-free. So if all you have is a brokerage account, a 401k, and you're getting Social Security, if you shift your numbers correctly and plan correctly, you can pay no taxes in retirement. So little nugget there for you. Market risk. We talked about this before. Sequence of returns risk. It is the silent killer. So the market does not tell us what it's going to do, but it sure tells you in real time what's happening. Person A is fully exposed. We'll talk about the red line here. And if you're an advisor or you know anything about money, you're probably thinking they cherry picked the worst years. Yeah, this chart kind of did. So back here, if you were around in the 2000 dot-com bubble, the market was way above this fixed line of blue, and it was way above the what we call an indexed line. That would be for an FIA or an IUL. But because the market tanked and then it came back and it tanked back in the housing crisis, we basically went 10 years, the lost decade, 10 years with zero growth in the market. So if you would just had a fixed account, just a CD, a traditional annuity, you would have beat the market from 98 to 2012. And if you were in the indexed account where market goes up almost as much as or the account goes up almost as much as the market, but when it goes down, you get a zero. So here we had this massive tank, then we broke even, another tank broke even. You actually came out with more of a balance over 13, 14 years. So it's very important to, I know we're going to say this over and over. How you got here and the money you saved, great. The fact that you did it, I meet with so many people in their 50s like, hey, I spent all my money on putting my kids through college. I wanted to make sure they started off life with no debt. To me, that's selfish for you to take that learning lesson from them because just my personality is if I let my kids have everything, they don't know how to survive. But if I give them just a little bit, they earn it. Now they get older, they can survive, take care of themselves. That's my parenting motto. But again, they spent all their money on taking care of their family and not saving a dime. Don't be like that. You saved something, that's great. Now let's look at better strategies to get you the most amount of income and pay the least amount of taxes in retirement. Yeah, nothing to add to that.
This chart, this chart says a lot because people are talking about how with where we're at right now, this is being recorded middle of March 2025. We're having the start of a recession. Interest rates are starting to go all over the place. Bonds are getting hammered. Everything is changing because of what the office is doing, and they're making a lot of drastic changes. Imagine if you were retiring right now, and even if you thought the market was just going to crush it for the next couple of years, and you were expecting that, and now the market's down 15%. Your income potential goes down 15% with it if you were trying to retire right now. You didn't have any control of who was in office, what legislation was getting pushed through. It is ridiculous to have all of that exposure and risk completely out of your control when you're about to be retiring. So all, again, we're trying to show here is that we want to take advantage of the red line, the blue line, and the green line. We want to take advantage of all of it. But the closer and closer you get to needing that money for income, we need to have more money in the green line to make sure that when the market does do well, we lock in that interest and we can now never go backwards. Because I've had clients the last couple of years, they're like, you know what, I think the market's going to keep going. You know what, I want to do an annuity, but I'm not sure yet. We ended up doing an annuity with part of their money, and they are so thankful because the market did really, really well and they were locking in 20% gains, 21% gains, 15% gains. And now the market tanked. All of that's locked in and they're completely protected versus having it all exposed where they're gaining tons of money and then they give it right back just the next couple months. So just think of that when you're going to your financial advisor. He will 100% give you financial marketing to keep you in the market because what does your advisor say when the market goes down? Don't worry, it'll come back. It'll come back. It will. But when you are very close to retirement, in your 5 years before retirement and 5 years after retirement, that is what's called the retirement red zone. Dustin played football. I did not play football. I was 100 pounds in high school, so never had the opportunity to do that. I would have been walked on. But the reason I say that is because in football, when you get closer to the end zone, you're not doing these crazy plays. You don't need crazy things going on. You want to be very tactical and precise, and all you're trying to get is, 2 yards, 5 yards, 1 yard, just to get across the end zone. That's how your retirement should be, is you can take crazy risks and you can do the Hail Marys when you're back, catching um, a punt, right? But when you're about to cross the line, you're about to score, we can't be taking that amount of risk. And that's all that is right before retirement, 5 years before, right after. If we have any negative years in that first 10 years, that can significantly increase the chance of you running out of money. And again, people aren't even aware of this stuff. That's why we're so passionate in talking about it, is because you can't protect against risks that you don't even know are there.
I like that analogy. If it's 3rd and 20, you're not going to do a quarterback sneak, and if it's
Hey.
4th and 1 in the goal line, you're not throwing a Hail Mary straight up.
Yep, exactly.
I like it. So real quick, I'll give you another little Econ 101, the S&P 500, the red line. If you don't know what the S&P 500 is, take out your pen. It's Standard and Poor's is the company, and they said, here's 500 companies that we want to represent our index. So if you didn't know, the last 2 years we have had ridiculous growth in the S&P 500. But guess what? 493 of the stocks in the S&P 500 did not do well. Most of them actually tanked, and a lot of them got taken off of the Standard and Poor's because they underperformed so well. But we had 20, 30% returns each year. How is that possible? Magnificent Seven, seven basically tech companies that just exploded. Nvidia, Tesla, all these companies that just blew up held the S&P 500 up. So you could say these seven companies have kept us from being in a major recession the last 2 years. That's just a little econ for you.
Hmm.
The hidden drain. I liked how we talked about this earlier. Imagine you had a retirement bucket of water. There's a spigot coming off the side that dripped into your income. Well, guess what? There's this hidden on the backside that you're paying a 1% fee to your advisor. You've never seen it, but you're like, man, this bucket is going down way faster than I know what to do with. Why is it doing this? And it's because there's that hidden spigot on the backside paying taxes or paying the fee to the investment firm. And then if you have it in pre-tax, your new bucket that the retirement income is dripping into has another hidden spigot on the back. It's called taxes. So you have all these leaks in all these different buckets where if you had just done it correctly the first time, managed your fees, got them low, paid the taxes early, you have one spigot. You can see it. It's right in front of you. It's really that basic. So person A, pay anywhere from 1 to 3% fees. We talked about it earlier. The average fee is 2.2%. The highest I've ever seen personally is 4. The highest I've heard of is 5%. So if you're paying a 2.2% fee, that is your light blue line down here. If you were paying a 0.2% fee, basically meaning you managed your own IRA, you would have about a $500,000 balance. But if you haven't managed in a 401k, about 320. So there's a difference in almost 50% accumulation over 40 years because you're paying a higher fee. Person B uses the strategy we talked about with little to nothing, no fees, and then the lower fees get you the higher compounding. So if you could make the pink line in a cash value life insurance policy we talked about 50 basis points over a lifetime, the difference in a Roth IRA, which would be about a 2% fee if you had it managed, and a cash value life insurance, which basically it's pretty close to the same thing. I won't say it's the same thing for compliance, but you could have almost 40% more balance and then double the income. So technically you have 200, 300% more income just because you lowered the fees and you paid taxes early.
When it comes to the bucket analogy that Dustin mentioned, I'll add to that a little bit because I think it's so powerful. When we talk about retirement income, clients don't come to retirement and they're like, hey, I have one vehicle, like let's take all my income out from this. What usually happens is they have a couple different buckets. They have a pension, they have a 401k, they have an IRA, they have a Roth, they have a brokerage. They got a bunch of different buckets that they come to retirement with and they say, hey, how can we maximize the income with all these different buckets? If you guys don't know, and again, this is a little teaser for another seminar, you should never take income from all the buckets at the same time. There's a strategic scenario where you want to start taking income from different buckets at certain times, but imagine how hard it is to even fill those buckets up when you're working. If you had a 2% fee and I have seen 3% with a lot of the guys that I meet with, and they don't even know that they can reduce that. But imagine how hard it is to even get those buckets that you come to retirement with full if you're trying to fill it up and the water's just leaking right out of it as easily as you put it back in. That is so powerful, especially when you're taking income out. If you have excessive fees that are unnecessary, what I mean by unnecessary is you never want to pay a fee unless it's doing something for you of value. With life insurance, what that 0.5% fee over a lifetime gives you death benefit, gives you living benefits, gives you tax-free growth, gives you market protection, gives you pension-like income. That is a huge amount of benefit for a very small fee. When it comes to your 401k, there's a 2% fee for what benefit? Not much, right? So again, when we're talking about this, that's where we have to make sure that we're optimizing all the assets you have, because you're eventually going to get to retirement and have, 4 or 5 different accounts and wonder, how the heck do I take income from this now? And that's exactly where you want to work with professionals, because if you have a bunch of different stuff going on, there is an optimal time to take each of those buckets of income. And I guarantee you, it's never going to be taking income from all those at once.
I'm glad you brought up the living benefits. So, real quick, if you've never heard of living benefits, it sounds like some marketing term. It basically means that, let's say you have life insurance and you come down with critical, chronic, terminal illness. You have to go into, you can't do two of the six activities of daily living. You go into a long-term care facility. The average long-term care facility stay today across the US is $7,500 a month. So if you have $150,000 in your 401k and you have to drain that, not only do you only get about 60% of it because of taxes, you will only be able to stay in a long-term care facility for like a year and 2 months. And then what? You get nothing. Versus if you had a $800,000 death benefit and you could use 100% of that in some cases, 800,000, that would get you 10 years in a long-term care facility. The average long-term care facility stay is 2.2 years. And I know I keep saying twos and 2.2s. It's actual, you can go look it up. 2.2 years, that's only about $160,000, $200,000 at the high end. So you could save from having to drain your 401k. 200,000 went to the long-term care facility. They didn't come after your house. They didn't take all your assets because you paid the bill. Then the 600,000 above that in the death benefit could be left behind to your spouse or whoever. So there's a whole lot of different things that the IUL, and we can talk about whole life, we can talk about all other life insurance policies, but from what we've seen in this particular situation with retirement planning, the IUL makes the most sense for most people. And then one last thing, if you didn't know, most people think that 401ks have no fees. And guess what? The average 401k has about 18 fees. So whenever I say go pull your comprehensive fee schedule, do not call and say, what's my fee? Oh, your management fee is 0.2%. Okay, well, what about this fee? What about that fee? Fees until about 7 years ago didn't even have to be disclosed. They did not have to show you the fees. Now they have to, but they're labeled differently. It could be a fee, could be a charge, could be an adjustment. But if you ask for a comprehensive fee schedule, it'll give you the whole breakdown. So I implore you, if you have something, go look. And I'm actually going to hand this one off to you because there's a lot of numbers and figures on here, and I don't want to botch it.
Yeah, for this slide, the key takeaways, I know this looks like a lot of numbers, I'll touch on it in a second, is if you have that 401k, you're eventually going to get to a point where you're running out of money almost every single time. This person A scenario is going to be looking at the period from 2000 to 2022. If you were taking out a $50,000 a year income, which is nothing crazy, and this is with a 1% fee, so half of the fees on average of what a 401k would have. If you take a withdrawal of 50K a year for retirement income, the first 3 years from 2000 to 2002, your account basically went down about, gosh, what is that? That's like 40% over 3 years. And you also took an additional $150,000 out of distributions. Your ending balance is almost 50%. It's even more than 50% down in the first 3 years of retirement in this case. Can you see why a lot of people, when we had the tech bubble and the real estate bubble, went back to work so quickly? Or a lot of people were literally jumping off buildings? This is why. Imagine working 30, 40 years of your life to go broke the first 7 years of retirement. I mean, that's horrific and it doesn't need to happen. But this is the greed of Wall Street, is Wall Street has this game where they want to accumulate as much assets under management as possible because that's how they make tons of money. Wall Street does not have their money in 401ks. I guarantee you. They are using those retirement assets for you as their personal income for the rest of their life. That's their retirement is your 401k. Think about that. The fees on that. because they know they're going to amass such a big volume and 1 to 2% on that for the rest of their life. They're never going to have to work and they're going to be on boats in Italy. I've had this client that I've worked with for a while now, and it was so funny. Well, it wasn't funny, it was actually sad. But it was what happened is what you said a second ago. You mentioned like yachts and, big cars and all these things. This guy, every time he tries to get a hold of his financial advisor, guess where he is? Vacationing. He's gone. He's on trips. It's like, hey, you know what? I won't be back in the office. When he's back in the office, he's meeting with his high level clients. He's not meeting with the medium and low income clients. It's so sad. But this is the reason is because when you're taking these distributions out over a period of time, what's going to happen if we just look down the table? This person has income for 16 years and then they're out of money. And this is with crazy rates of return. I mean, we have 26s, we have 13s, we have 23s, we have 29s, 19s, 28s. We're getting really good rates of return, but we're still running out of money. So how would it feel if you again worked 30, 40 years of your life, you get to 65, 70 years old, and 16 years into retirement, you're dead broke and out of money? That's a horrible thing to have happen. The reason we show this is because it doesn't need to be this way. So the withdrawals to highlight quickly on the bottom, Dustin, if you could circle it for me. The total withdrawals overall that the person took was 1.15 million. So they turned $1 million retirement account into only $1.15 million of withdrawals throughout their, actually, no, it's even less.
Even
I
less because they
apologize.
stayed here. Yep.
Yeah, they're still showing it there. So that's actually about $750,000 of withdrawals, not even accounted for taxes. That's horrible because we had so many losses in those years. It doesn't have to be that way. This is what's called sequence or return risk. If you go to the other slide, this is an example. And again, we would never, just so you guys know, we would never put all your eggs in one basket, but this is just an apples to apples comparison of if someone had $1 million in an annuity versus $1 million in a 401k, what would happen? At the age of 67, that's just the average retirement that we're illustrating here. This person could take out 7.86% of whatever balance they had, guaranteed for the rest of their life. So we have more income for longer. And Dustin, if you want to highlight it there at age 80, where their account balance is zero, in their 401k, whenever the balance goes to zero, guess what? You're broke. You have no income. But in an annuity, when you have a pension income for life, that is a contractual guarantee from an insurance company that they're going to still pay that out as long as you live. So now let's say we go down to age, 90, 97, even at the bottom, because people are living longer. People are living to their hundreds. Some people are, in Europe are living to 120s. That's $2.4 million of withdrawals from $1 million account versus 750. That's huge. And that's not even taking into account some of the other tax planning that we can do with these, but that's why annuities are so powerful is you don't want to worry about retiring at the wrong time and having to go back to work, having to downsize, having to do all these things that you never expected to do down the line. That's where annuities come in.
What's your favorite line is like, what if you could retire when you wanted to?
What if you could retire when you wanted to versus when the market told you you could? And that's what we see right now is so many people are going to have to be working longer, work at Walmart, pick up a part-time job simply because their portfolio can't hold the value that it's at because all the things that are happening right now with the market.
Yep. Protect the long story is protect what you have. And if you're going to build something else, let's build it in somewhere a little bit smarter than gambling your entire household.
Hmm.
Legacy and wealth transfers. This is actually very, very simple. Do you want to leave a taxable inheritance like a 401k? Let's say you do have $1 million, you die the next day before you take income. If your family inherits that 401k, they can either convert it to an IRA and keep it till they turn 60, or they can drain it over 5 years. If you start to drain it, you have to spend it down over 5 years. $200,000 a year, you are putting your family in a position to have to pay massive taxes. So you can leave that taxable inheritance. Well, I got this trashy little bucket. I'm not saying that it's the worst idea, but you could leave a taxable inheritance, or you could be like person B, who has the index universal life policy that grew tax free. They got to take tax free income. And then whenever they die, there's always some kind of death benefit if you take the right amount of income that we tell you to take. So you could either leave a taxable inheritance or a tax free inheritance. And then you can even get down the rabbit hole of estate planning. If you've seen my estate planning webinar, you can make it to where you leave that death benefit to a revocable trust. And you can dictate where that money goes. Hey, I want to keep it in a certain investment. I want to put it into my real estate. I want to put it into a high yield savings account, you know, $1 million into a high yield savings account, 5%. I want 25,000 a year to go to both of my kids. You can dictate where it goes and make sure that you keep a legacy in place. You can also add in certain things like, hey, if my kids get on drugs, I want to cut that off until they're 6 months drug free. I want to make sure that they at least have a part-time job or they get no income. So on this side, zero control. On this side, tax free, all the control. There's not really
I have,
much to that.
I have nothing to add. That's perfect. I love the Home Depot bucket.
Let's do it. And this is kind of I kind of see this as laughable, but person A did all the wrong things, person B did all the right things. Which one would you rather do? I'll just walk through them. Person A did not get tax-free income because they put all of their money into 401ks and IRAs. Now, again, we can say, hey, maybe you did a Roth conversion. Cool, you could be person B. Maybe you did a Roth IRA and you only had 700,000 in your 401k. You can still be person B. Market protection, you didn't get market protection because you kept everything in the market. You gambled all of your money. Look, David says this all the time with his clients. Like people are, they're told that bonds are actually safe, and they're really not. They're their own market, and they go down just about as much as stocks do. So whenever an advisor tells you, "Hey, we're going to put 60-40 in bonds and equities," they're not really protecting you. They're just giving you a lower return with less risk. The key word is less. Lifetime income, you do not get a lifetime income with a 401k IRA, just as we showed you. That guy that started in 2000 ran out of money in 15 years, got $750,000 of income. If the other person would have lived for that 15 years, they would have had more income every year, but at the same time, it would have been a lifetime income. So if you could get, in that case, I think it's 25%, 30% more income, plus not run out of money, that's a no-brainer. No required minimum distributions because you're taking that pension-like income. There's no reason to even worry about RMDs. Plus, if you have the tax-free IUL, there's no RMDs on a tax-free policy or a tax-free account. Then the guaranteed legacy. If you have the IUL, you have the legacy that's not taxable. And then if you use estate planning trusts, you can make sure that that legacy lives on.
I have nothing to add. Like you said, it's kind of a joke.
It is.
Which
It's
person
just
do you want to be?
that's it. That's that you just tied it together. It's like which word person do you want to be? Person A, person B. The person on the right's like, oh, that path isn't very straight. I don't think I could fit my car on it because it goes to one tire. It's something I don't know. And path A looks like my tires will fit on it, so I'll keep going down that road. It's literally that simple. Like one thing I always say, and it's the biggest joke, but it makes so much sense. Don't listen to your broke uncle. Don't listen to your boss. Listen to people that are where you want to be. And that's if you're talking to people. If you're talking to an advisor, you just have to ask yourself, well, what is their angle? Is their angle to make a pension like income off of me forever with my 401k, with my money managed account? Are they just looking out for their best interest, like Primerica? Primerica says only use term insurance, but you have to put everything else into our investments. Northwestern Mutual might say, hey, you can buy a whole life policy. It'll grow some cash value, but for the most part, we just want to manage your money. And then you have the independent space, which is like, we don't consider the fiduciary way the best way because I kind of laugh at the fiduciary way because a fiduciary technically has to do what's legally right by you, but that only goes to here. If all I know is 10 different bullet points in a 200-page book, I can't do legally what's right for you because I don't know it. But at the end of the day, if I know 100 strategies and I can put you in three of those 100 strategies that best fits your plan, that's what we should do. So while I keep talking here, the QR code on the right side, that's going to be a Calendly link to my Calendly, my free booking call. So if you want to scan that, just pull out your phone. I know if you're retired in 5 to 10 years, you're probably not very technically savvy. Pull out your camera, aim it over that code. It should bring up a link. If you want to click on that and fill out that form, it's free. Pick a time to meet with us. Most likely you'll meet with me or David, but don't be surprised if you see somebody else on our team. Besides that, David, I know you have some closing remarks you'd probably like to hit on.
Only thing I'll add is, again, I've met with a lot of clients in the years we've been doing this, and we've been fortunate to retire a lot of people where they're actually taking income and they're at the point now where they're just like, man, this is fantastic. I'm so happy that I'm receiving income. I have guarantees. That's really fulfilling to see now. The one thing I will say from almost every single person we've met with is they were all at one point on road A. They didn't know about road B. They had some questions, they had some concerns. What I would always welcome, and I will do this till the day I die, bring those questions to the table because there's never, ever, ever been a question that we haven't heard, that we can't answer, and we can't handle. The what's the saying? It's like the devil you know, is better than the devil you don't. That is not the case when it comes to your retirement. You don't want to be guessing with your money. Just because you don't know about something or you're not familiar with it doesn't mean that you shouldn't employ experts to make sure that your pensions and your strategies are maximized. That's all I'll leave you guys with is just make sure that you're doing a discovery call. This is not a sales pitch. Obviously, we'd love to help you with those things if you want. But at the end of the day, we're going to show you path A, where that's going to lead you, the income and how much you're going to have. Path B, how much more income you could have with basically no additional risk. And at the end of the day, it's your decision to see what you would like to do. So I'll just leave it at that.
Glad you said that. Well, if you're not ready to make a decision and that QR code is not for you, no, you will get an email here in about 24 hours. I'll have all the webinars in that email. I'll have some free reading if you just like to read. And also, I will have the link that's in this QR code in that. Besides that, I will see you on the next webinar. You better be there.